Connect Run Club Podcast, episode number 99, an Olympic preview with Erin Strout. Hey, welcome back, runners, to the Connect Run Club Podcast. Excited to talk with you. And hey, this is really exciting. I mean, we are in the midst of the Olympics, and our favorite, well, my favorite track and field is like right upon us.
Yeah, this one's fun for me because up until working here, track and field, I'd watched about the 100-meter dash, and that was about it. But this year it's been fun because I know a lot of the storylines going into it, courtesy of this interview especially.
Absolutely.
But normally swimming was like my big thing, so I loved watching all the swimming events. But yeah, I'm excited about track and field next week.
Well, swimming's been, beyond fantastic. This swimming has been,
Russia versus the United States. It's like it's the Cold War.
Little finger wag here or there.
And then I'll definitely say my favorite moment, and Trey, I want to get your best death stare, was when this happened the other night. And I heard you guys talking about me yesterday when I walk into the office.
With
and I'll probably, because I don't have any coffee yet, and so I would say I can identify with that. I will say when my hair's shorter, or especially when it's buzzed, people will say sometimes I look like Michael Phelps.
I can see that.
So he's got 20 more gold medals than me, but I guess we're pretty similar. But yeah, so this is coming out. We're recording this on Wednesday of the first week of the Olympics.
That's right.
So this will come out on a Thursday. So I don't think he races tonight, but I don't think he'll have any more medals before then.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
They could just give him a medal.
They could.
Might as well.
They could.
But yeah, so we've got a fun interview for you guys this week. We thought with track and field, I think it's starting on
Friday.
And are there finals on Friday?
There might be. I would guess there'd be some kind of finals on Friday, is my guess.
So a lot of the heats and the trials are starting up, and then I know we've got the final for the marathon on Sunday.
Yeah, the women's marathon is Sunday.
And so that's getting rolling, and then next week will be super track and field heavy. So we kind of shift from the pool to the track. And so we thought, why not get someone in here that actually knows a little bit about these athletes and their backstory, chat with them about what you guys should be looking out for in the Olympics, especially if you're like me and you might recognize a couple names, but you may not know everybody. We want to give you guys a good preview. So
yeah, and it was really interesting. A couple of different ways to look at this and how we talk with Erin. So Erin spent some time, and you may not recognize the name, but if you have Runner's World and if you read it online, you've definitely read some of her articles. She spent time at the Olympic trials back in Eugene in July, and had a lot of time with the athletes. And so there was some really interesting storylines. You know, one of the interesting storylines for me, which we talked about, was how there's a little bit new mixed with some of the old. So there's some brand new young athletes headed to Rio, and even ones that didn't make it that are right on the horizon. But then you've got some like Meb, you got some like Bernard Lagat, who are masters runners, and they are still tearing it up. So that's one storyline that's really interesting. And of course, the marathon, both women and men's marathon, provides some fantastic storylines from the United States perspective, and some of them are going to be a bit of an unknown. We talked about Galen Rupp, and he certainly has the possibility to medal, but with only his second marathon, it's like, who knows? And the women, I think they're set up to have a great race. And so really, really fascinating storylines. And then we also get to talk about kind of what she learned personally from the runners and how she's able to apply it to her running. And I think one of the neat things, and I think we see this, and you see it with the interviews, is one of the things we talked about too, are the character of these athletes. Sometimes you get lost in the talent and you forget that these athletes work harder than anybody that you know, and that comes with character. So we talked about, hey, what is the character of these athletes? What are they made of? And so we talked about that as well. So you get a fascinating kind of insider's view of Rio and what she expects to see, what she's excited to see. And of course, I think she said the first thing she's excited to see won't have to take long, is going to be that women's marathon, which is opening weekend. Yeah. So should be fun to watch.
And she sounds like she's got some personal connections to Shalane, so which is real fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, guys, if you guys are, when you listen to this, we actually did this interview on Tuesday of the first week of the Olympics. So what's today? Today's
Wednesday, something.
Yes. Whatever the date is. Anyway, so we recorded this on a Tuesday, and she was actually getting on the plane on Wednesday to fly down to Rio.
right.
So this is a couple days before track and field started. So if you guys are listening to this after the events are over, we don't know what has happened.
No idea.
But you'll get a preview of what just happened. So,
That's right.
So yeah, this is a good one. And then next week, we're going to talk about a subject that has been coming up a lot, and that is doping. So we've got Mario, who used to be with the competitor group as a journalist, and we're going to be chatting with him all about doping and its impact on the sport. So,
Seems to be a hot topic right now.
very, very hot topic. Yeah. So that's going to be episode 101, and then you want to make sure and tune in on Monday. It's episode 100. So.
You
Which
never
is
know what we're going to talk about in episode.
Crazy. 100. I still remember when we sat. You were the very first
first
yeah.
one. We kept the bar really low on the very first one.
We went from you, and then we went to. Well, I think we went to Jeff Galloway pretty quick after that.
Yes.
So. But anyway, so yeah, we'll dive into more in that episode 100. If you guys have any questions for us, or you guys just want to hang out with us, make sure and check us out on Facebook. Go to connectrunclub.com/Facebook. You can join our group, and you can join us on Strava as well. That's connectrunclub.com/Strava. We'd love to connect with you, and we hope you guys enjoy this Olympic preview with Erin.
Well, Erin, thanks again for hopping on the phone. I know you've got to be excited, getting ready to head to Rio and see this in person. Have you been to the Olympics before?
No, this is my first time, so I'm pretty excited and a little nervous.
Well, that's great. That's great. Well, I tell you what, I don't think we're going to get it, but I mean, if we could get like a tenth of the drama that's already happened in swimming and track and field, it would be quite the competition in Rio, wouldn't it?
It would be. Yeah, the swimming's been amazing to watch, and just kind of even out of the pool, some of the things that have been going on there have been interesting to watch too.
Exactly. Yeah. And it kind of, we could spend the whole time on this. I don't want to do that, but the whole Russia doping thing. I was thinking the other day, I don't think we've ever seen anything like the reaction, but I don't think we've ever seen anything so systemic and blatant before. So I guess it's new on all accounts what's going on right now with the Russians.
Yeah. I mean, we've been obviously hearing about it in track and field for quite some time. So, and the fact that Russian athletes won't be at the track kind of eliminates some of that drama that's going on in the pool. Yeah. Although I think we'll still hear, doping's been front and center in the news for a long time now. And it's been kind of a crazy year of revelations and what's been going on. And so I think, it's on everybody's minds, and I think it's going to come up while we're there.
Yeah. Would love to, before we even jump into Rio, would love to hear about the trials experience and I would love to get your take because, it was a shocker, as you're used to seeing specific names, used to seeing certain performances, and all of a sudden you're seeing high schoolers and young kids coming up, and it was a changing of the guard in some ways at the trials. What were your big takeaways from the trials themselves?
I think that was a major takeaway. I think we did see a lot of young athletes who are up and coming just have big breakthroughs while we were there, and that was exciting to see. And it's also it's great to see so many new first-time Olympians on the team. I think it'll, a lot of them haven't had this international experience yet. They haven't, gone head to head with some of the top names in the world yet. So I think, on some counts, what we'll see in Rio is a lot of learning experiences. Yep. But it's also, I think it says great things about the future of track and field in our country.
Yeah, I totally agreed. I guess even a place I like to start because it goes completely opposite of that, especially watching Bernard Lagat in the 10,000 meters. You're thinking, wow, I guess this is the last hurrah. Then all of a sudden, the 5,000 meters, he was incredible. Did anybody expect that kind of performance out of him in the 5,000 meters after the 10?
I didn't.
Yeah.
I think, when we saw the 10,000 meters and so many of the top names just didn't even finish that race. I had no idea really what to expect in the 5,000 in the men's. But I have to say it was probably the most exciting race that I watched while I was there. It was just definitely, I was not in the press time for that one. I was actually out watching it, for real, live. Yep. On Hayward Field. And there wasn't a person, not standing on their feet watching that and cheering. And it was incredible. And I think, it's kind of the opposite of what we're seeing with all the young people on the team. Then we have Bernard Lagat and Meb, who are definitely the old guard. And as a Masters runner, I love to see it. So.
Yes, completely agree. Well, it's a nice reminder that, and in fact, we were talking with a coach this morning from Run Smart Project, and just because you're aging it just means you need to change your training. It doesn't mean you're done. It doesn't mean you can't go fast. And so it's really encouraging to see some of the older athletes have success, because it does remind us that, hey, we have to train differently, but our best days are not necessarily behind us either.
That's exactly true. And I think more than anything, in the past couple of years, we've seen a lot of success. Dina is still tearing it up, and Magda is doing really great on the ultra scene. And so, I think it's just a matter of being really smart about what you're doing and respecting your limitations and making sure that you're doing all those little things to keep yourself healthy. And I think, bringing it back to Lagat and Meb in the Olympics, I think that's the one thing that they keep saying over and over again when asked, and what their coaches say is just, sometimes it's more advantageous for us to take a day off than it is to, go hit the track again for another workout.
Yeah. Are there a couple of events in particular that you've got kind of on your radar that you're just like really, really excited to see?
I think the women's marathon, and I don't have to wait too long to see that.
That's exactly right.
I've been covering Shalane and Desi and Amy for quite some time now, and I feel like I did start at running times 4 years ago, and so one of my first big stories was on Shalane, and I got to spend a lot of time with her back then. And she comes here to Flagstaff, where I live, quite often to train. So I've gotten to know her over the years, and same with Desi, just seeing her at major events and throughout the years. And I think part of the joy of covering what I cover is just getting to know these athletes and being able to talk to them so often. And the fact that I get to go now and watch them on their biggest day is, I can't wait. I can't wait to see what they do out there, because I think all three of them are in really, really good shape.
Agreed. And I tell you what, that had to have been one of the most exciting trial marathons I've ever seen, because you had three unique things happen. You had Des, who she made the plan and she followed the plan to a T. And I mean, you're talking about execution of a plan. She did it. Then you had the guts it took for both Amy and for Shalane to go out there, and then of course the guts that Shalane showed to the finish to hang on is just. But it truly was just so many stories involved with the trials, and it was amazing performance from those three ladies.
It definitely was. It was one of my favorite races to watch and to cover and to write about, for sure. You can always count on Desi to know exactly what she's going to do out there, and she very rarely deviates from her plans. And she's so confident in her training, and she's so confident in what her coaches tell her to do. And she knows herself so well at this point that, she's comfortable letting these people go and knowing, in the end, I have what it takes to still make this team, even though she's seeing Amy and Shalane, take off farther down the street. Yeah. I mean, Desi's just the definition of calm, cool, collected. She just knows what to do out there. And and I think, very few people have the kind of talent and fitness that Shalane has to be able to still make an Olympic team on your very worst day. That's amazing.
Truly is. How do you feel like the three of them will fare pretty good in the heat? They seem to do well in LA, and I think last time, I don't know if she still is, but I know Des had been training in Orlando. It's hard to get a whole lot harder than that. So do you think they're all pretty good as far as the heat goes in your mind?
I do. I think just even hearkening back to their college days for Desi and Amy, they both went to Arizona State University. They trained in Phoenix for many years there. And I think, he doesn't scare either one of them. And I think with Shalane, she's worked really, really hard since the trials in February to nail down her fueling and nutrition so that she's better in the heat. So I think they're all very prepared for that.
That's great. What about as we turn towards the men's marathon? You know, we have again really cool stories there. We have Meb, who, of course, you know, Father Time is not winning in this occasion, but then you also have Galen Rupp, and it's a mystery going in his second marathon now. I guess the thing he has going for him is, I don't know, when I looked at some marathoners that we've had in the past, just like Ryan Hall seemed to me was a time guy. I mean, if you wanted someone who can go quick, that's him. And Galen Rupp strikes me as a big race kind of guy. And so a little bit of an unknown going into the Olympics with him.
It is. And you often see elite marathoners have great first marathons. And then for some reason, when the second one comes around, it doesn't go quite as well. And you know, they all become students of this distance because there's so many variables to it. So yeah, I'm not quite sure what to expect with Galen, but I do know that, you know, Alberto doesn't put any athletes on the line without them being fully prepared. And so I wouldn't be surprised if he does really well. I think the fact that he's doubling with the 10,000 meters, I really don't know what to expect there, because, you know, it's not only like physically draining, it's also mentally draining, I would imagine, being at that level and competing at that level twice on the world stage in such a short period of time. So, I fully expect him to do really well, but those second marathons could be tricky for some reason for elite marathoners.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And, you know, and I guess the question, and I'm sure his coach knows this, but you wonder if it had a huge benefit to either one of those, preparing for a 10,000, preparing for a marathon. You almost wonder if he's more prepared for the 10 or more prepared for the marathon, or if is he not. You know, you almost wonder which one is it going to benefit the most.
Right. And and I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But I would love to know more about what kind of training he's done to be able to prepare for both. And maybe we'll be able to ask those questions when we get to Rio. But I'm very curious to hear how one prepares for both.
Now, in any thoughts? Have you heard anything? I wonder from the 5,000 and 10,000. You know, when we were in London in 2012, nobody had an answer for Mo Farah. Do you think that still exists, or do you think some guys are on his heels a little bit this year and can take him down in one of those events this year?
You know, I kind of have a feeling that it's going to be a close call for Mo this year.
Yeah.
I haven't really followed him too much up until this point. I'm really, really excited to watch him race in person. I've never seen him race in person. So that'll be exciting. I don't really know what to expect out of him. I think, again, we've seen him just maybe a month ago. He did have, you know, he was looking very well in the race that he did. And so, I mean, I wish him well, and I hope he does. He's very exciting to watch, and so. But I think there are other athletes that are going to give him a big run for the money this year.
Are there a couple of young athletes, since we talked about that earlier? There are a couple of young athletes that stick out to you that you're really curious to see how they do on the big stage.
I think there are several. Let me think about that for a second. I think it'll be fun to watch somebody like Shelby Houlihan in the 5,000. Mm-hmm. She's, you know, a year out of college and made the team, and I think it'll be interesting to see how she does. She's another one who I always get the impression who just kind of is a cool cat, just kind of, you know, understated most of the time and seems very level-headed, and I think this will be a huge learning experience for her. I think, it's going to be fun to see what our women in the 10,000 can do. They've got probably the biggest competition and for American-wise for, you know, in any of the distance events. I think Molly Huddle mentioned that it would take an American record effort to even be in contention for a medal. And I think from what I'm hearing, she's in that kind of shape.
Wow.
But she's got some stiff competition coming from all sides. So I think even if she does get the American record, I don't think that's a guarantee to get a medal. So, there are a lot of young people, yes, but I'm also really excited to watch people like Molly and see what they can do out there, because they've got a lot of great experience, and it's going to be fun to watch them.
Do you know anything about Allyson Felix and her health? I know at the trials she was really dealing with the ankle. Do you know if that's something she's probably still going to be dealing with? Or do you have any idea about her ankle and how that's going?
I don't really. I've read a few things. I haven't spoken to her at all since the trials, but I've read that she has said that she's in good health and that she's not worried about it. And so I guess we'll have to take her word for that.
That's great. As you saw the sprinters and Justin Gatlin, some of the others, do you think there's any shot whatsoever to knock? I guess if Bolt, I guess it depends on his health, but if he's healthy, do you think anyone has a shot whatsoever at Usain?
That's a great question. I think if anybody does, it's probably Justin Gatlin.
Yeah.
It's going to be a really exciting race to watch also. I think Bolt just feeds off the crowd so well, and he's not just an athlete, obviously we've heard time and time again, he's an entertainer too. And so I think he's going to have a lot of crowd support out there too, which you can't minimize that.
Yep. I know we can certainly do this from watching the marathon, because I feel like there's so much to learn, but is there anything particular that you walked away from with the trials, or that you would look at the Olympics and say, hey, is there anything that we can learn from some of the elites about, is it their training or how they run a race or how they deal with things mentally? Are there things that you look for as a runner that you're like, hey, these are things that I've learned over the years, or things I like to watch that I can learn from the elites over the
years? There's so many things that I've learned from them over the years. And I feel like everything that they do and the ways in which they prepare can be scaled to, any runner of any ability. From Shalane, I've learned a lot about fueling and nutrition, and just, her cookbook, I think, comes out tomorrow. And
wow.
So excited to see it.
That's great.
So excited to get home and get cooking. But and I think what strikes me most about the athletes at the highest level in our sport is that time and time again, you see that they don't get too high and they don't get too low about their performances. And I think that's really important lesson to learn, is that, one race doesn't define you. And the fact that they're able to manage their emotions so well, I think is one thing that's kind of across the board. And like I said, with Mev, it's a lesson a day. I think anytime you talk to that guy, you're going to learn something. And with him, I think it's, as he's aged, it's just doing all those little things like the stretching and the drills and the making sure that you're eating properly. And it's just everything adds up. And none of these things are little anymore. They're just things you have to do if you want to keep running.
Absolutely.
At a high level.
Yeah. Would love to get your thoughts on this. I was listening to a podcast a few weeks ago, and is actually the president of the Detroit Pistons. And the guy who was interviewing him asked him a question. He was like, hey, what separates the greatest from the good? And he said, you're not going to believe it when I tell you the answer. He was like, but I'm going to tell you it's their faith. And he's like, don't just jump to conclusions. He said, but what I'm saying is, he says the character of those people is far more than some of the others. He's like, and it translates to their work ethic. It translates to how they treat people. That was going to be the question I was going to ask you. Do you kind of sense that too with some of the athletes you've had a chance to talk with? Do you have a sense that, what's inside them and their character, what weighs so much into kind of what their work ethic is on a day in, day out basis?
Absolutely. I think, somebody once asked me, just because I get to talk to so many of the top track and field athletes in our country pretty often. Somebody asked me, well, who's a jerk? And I was like, and I stopped for a second and I was like, I honestly really haven't met a jerk yet. I mean, to be honest with you, they're all really nice, solid people.
Yeah.
And they, I feel like they treat people well. I feel like the ones that have the most success, um, they have something else. They're doing it for another reason, and it's not just for their personal glory. Whether it's, Meb likes to motivate kids, and the whole motivation behind him trying to get to another Olympic Games was for his family, and because he wants his children to remember, him competing in an Olympics. And often I would say the top athletes always have something sort of that they're doing it for besides themselves. And I think that's really a great lesson for all of us, is to kind of just, running is running, but can you attach a higher purpose to it, whatever that means for you? And I think most of the top athletes really do.
That's really neat. All right, as we look kind of down the lineup, we've talked about some of the big names out there, and are there a couple of American athletes that maybe, maybe it's not Gatlin, maybe it's not Rupp. Are there a couple that maybe fly under the radar that could be potential medalists in their particular event that maybe the average runner doesn't really know of, that doesn't come right off the tip of their tongue?
That's a great question. I feel like most of the ones that are in medal contention probably are, familiar names to people who follow the sport. Yeah. I'm trying to think. I mean, some of the, like we've been talking about, there's a lot of up and coming runners that I feel like you're going to hear lots about, in the next couple of years. And it's going to be fun to see how they do. But I think for a lot of them, like, making the final is the biggest goal they have for this Olympic Games. It's not necessarily being in medal contention. So I think, people to watch for, not necessarily, you're going to hear about them in this Olympics, but perhaps not in medal contention. I think people like Mariel Hall, super talented, first Olympics in the 10,000. I think, I think one person who we have heard about is Emily Infeld, but I really think, like, she's sort of becoming a more common name now, and somebody that people really gravitate toward because she's happy and she has a bubbly personality and she's not afraid to just be who she is in front of people. And I think she's going to be fun to watch in the 10,000 too. So yeah, I could probably go on for hours about some of the athletes that I think we're going to hear more from, beginning with these Olympics, but have huge futures in front of them.
Well, and a couple too, we have a couple that came to mind that I know are incredible athletes, boy, but their competition is so stiff, and that would be in the steeplechase with Evan Jager and also Emma Coburn. It's like, so talented, but boy, the competition they're up against is just extreme.
It's incredible. Yeah. I think both of them, they're such huge talents here, and they're far and away the best at what they do in our country. But then when you put them up against Kenyans and, some of the international talent, it's just, I hope they do well. I think they both do have a chance to medal. But, it's going to be really tough for both of them, for sure.
It is. Hey, but besides the marathon, is there a particular event kind of in the track one night that you're like, hey, I can just imagine the electric excitement for this event?
Well, I mean, the men's 100 meters is always, I would say that's going to be, that final will be interesting to watch. It'll be really exciting to watch. The steeple is always one of my favorites to watch, because really, I mean, when it comes down to it, anything can happen in a steeplechase. And so watching that is always really exciting. What else? I think the women's 10 and 5 are both going to be good. I think they'll both be interesting to watch. I think there's a lot that's going to happen that's going to be pretty electrifying in the stadium.
Awesome. You gonna have a chance to get any runs in while you're down there?
Oh my gosh, I have no idea what the running situation is going to be.
I was wondering about that.
It sounds like media is spending a lot of time on buses trying to get from point A to point B, and so I hope to be able to run, but it sounds like I'm going to be sitting on buses a lot. So I've kind of put my own running on hold until I get back from Rio, and then I'll get started again.
I understand. Are you training for anything particular right now?
I had this weird idea that I'd have time to train for a marathon in the for the fall. That did not happen between all the Olympic trials and then getting sick and then going to Rio, and so that was kind of put on the back burner. But I hope I get to train for. I'm looking for like a late winter, early spring marathon to do. So we'll see.
That's great. That's great. Well, hey, we hope you enjoy your marathon of a trip that you have coming up. So know it's going to be a long flight, and hope you have an incredible time in Rio. Brandon, do you have any questions on your end? So, good. Hey, we thank you so much for giving us a little preview of what to watch for. You're starting this weekend. It's going to be a lot of fun, and hope you enjoy it down there in person.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Thanks, Erin.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.